Honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't, because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right. At its worst, Canada is what American voters think happens when there's no one putting a check on extreme wokeness. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore. Or on immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking.
Bill Maher doesn't usually go after other countries, but when Democrats start living in a dream world, someone has to wake them up. Ever since Donald Trump came back to the White House, people on the left have been talking about moving to Canada again, like it's some kind of perfect liberal heaven. Maher just shut that idea down completely. So what did he say about Canada that's making progressives uncomfortable? If you want the full story, hit subscribe and let's get into it.
If we want to save our country, we should follow the advice good liberals have given for decades and learn from other countries. Especially those beacons of progressivism like Canada, England, and Scandinavia. And I agree we should, as long as we're honest about the lessons we're learning, and as long as we're up to date on the current data, such as the unemployment rate in the US is 3.8%, and in Canada it's 6.1%. And of the 15 North American cities with the worst air pollution, 14 are in Canada. I'm not citing these stats because I have it out for Canada. I love Canada and its people, and always have. But I hate zombie lies. Zombie lies.
Maher didn't ease into it. He came out swinging right away. He went after one of the left's favorite stories. Canada as the kind, civilized, morally better safe haven that Democrats have been dreaming about for years. And honestly, that story was long overdue for a reality check. How many times have Americans been lectured by progressive politicians who talk about Canada like it's some kind of perfect working utopia? Bernie Sanders has spent years holding up Canada's healthcare system like it's the best in the world, using it to make the United States look cruel and broken. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has praised Canada's social programs in the same way, pushing the idea that America is hopelessly behind. These talking points have been repeated so many times they've turned into political leftovers. Maher calls them what they are: zombie lies, old ideas, stale assumptions, and recycled myths dressed up as compassion. Used to make America, especially under Trump, look like a disaster. But the moment he starts looking at the actual record, the whole performance starts to fall apart.
There's only one problem with thinking everything's better in Canada. It's not. Not anymore, anyway. Last year, Canada added 1.3 million people, which is a lot in 1 year, the equivalent of the US adding 11 million migrants in 1 year. And now they're experiencing a housing crisis even worse than ours. And we're sleeping in tents. The median price of a home here is $346,000. In Canada, converted to US dollars, it's $487,000. If Barbie moved to Winnipeg, she wouldn't be able to afford her dream house, and Ken would be working at Tim Hortons.
Then Maher turns his attention to one of the left's most carefully hidden obsessions: open borders. Democrats almost never say it out loud, but critics have argued for years that their instincts, their words, and their policies all point in the same direction. More openness, less enforcement, and a constant urge to shame anyone who pushes back. America watched that debate heat up during the Biden presidency, especially when Kamala Harris was put in charge of the border, and critics accused her of treating it like a minor political problem instead of a national crisis. That's when Maher shifts to Canada and brings up numbers he says should worry people. Canada took in over 1 million immigrants in a single year, and Maher's point is that the consequences hit hard and fast. Housing didn't just get tighter, it became brutal. Rent shot up. Buying a home moved further out of reach for everyday Canadians. The financial pressure became impossible to ignore. His point is not hard to miss. When immigration happens at this kind of scale without serious limits, the damage doesn't stay invisible. It lands directly on real people just trying to afford a place to live.
And because of mortgage debt, Canada has the highest debt to GDP ratio of any G7 nation. I don't know what that means, but it sounds bad. So does their vaunted healthcare system, which ranks dead last among high-income countries in access to primary healthcare and ability to see a doctor in a day or two. And it's not for lack of spending. Of the 30 countries with universal coverage, Canada spends over 13% of its economy on it, which is a lot of money for free healthcare.
And that leads Maher straight into another favorite progressive talking point: universal healthcare. Politicians like Bernie Sanders, and even figures like New York City Mayor Zoran Mandani, never miss a chance to hold up Canada's healthcare system like it's the greatest example of smart government. Free healthcare, they say, as if the word free answers every serious question before it can even be asked. Maher isn't buying that pitch. He points to the huge amounts of money Canada pours into healthcare every single year and then drops the hammer. Despite all that spending, he argues, Canada still performs poorly on key measures of access and quality compared to other developed countries. And on some healthcare access measures, it ranks near the bottom among its peers. That's the part the left never wants to talk about. Free doesn't automatically mean better. A price tag of 0 means very little if people still struggle to get care on time, and the system keeps falling short after eating up a massive chunk of the economy.
Look, I'm not saying Canada still isn't a great country. It is, but those aren't paradise numbers. If Canada was an apartment, the lead feature might be America adjacent. And if America was a rental car, Canada would be America or similar. And again, honestly, Canada, I'm not saying any of this because I enjoy it. I don't, because I've always enjoyed you. But I need to cite you as a cautionary tale to help my country. And the moral of that tale is, yes, you can move too far left. And when you do, you wind up pushing the people in the middle to the right.
But Maher isn't done. Then he walks straight into the topic that makes the modern left instantly defensive: wokeness. As if housing pressure, immigration strain, and healthcare problems weren't already enough to break apart the Canada fantasy, Maher argues there's another piece of this story that rarely makes it into the glowing headlines. Canada hasn't just dabbled in progressive ideology. In his view, it has gone all in. It has made it official, rewarded it, and buried it deep inside the culture and the machinery of government. This is no longer just about kindness, inclusion, or basic decency. Maher frames it as a kind of ideological overreach that has gone way past moderation and into full enforcement. And once he gets specific, things heat up fast. That's when the conversation becomes really uncomfortable for the people who built entire political careers around treating Canada like the gold standard of morality.
Say in politics, liberals are the gas pedal and conservatives are the brakes. And I'm generally with the gas pedal, but not if we're driving off a cliff. On the trans issue, America is no ands, ifs, or buts about it, absolutely alone in the world now, an outlier country. Last month, England's National Health Service announced that there's not enough evidence to support the safety or clinical effectiveness of puberty blockers for third graders.
And there it is. In Maher's telling, Canada didn't just welcome woke ideology. It invited it in, gave it the keys, and let it take over. The examples he brings up are not presented as rare stories or one-off incidents. He treats them as proof of a broader culture shaped by an ideology that, in his view, too often puts feelings ahead of facts and group thinking ahead of honest debate. Try having a simple, straightforward conversation on certain cultural issues, he suggests, and watch how fast it turns into a moment of moral shaming. That is his warning. The woke agenda, as he frames it, is not just annoying or over the top. It can become destructive. It can damage institutions, shut down open conversation, and make real disagreement feel almost impossible. And the most powerful part of his argument is this: America doesn't seem to be learning from Canada's very visible visible mistakes. If anything, parts of the American left seem determined to bring in the same ideas with even more energy and excitement.
So too with all the other good place countries, in direct opposition to America's choice to affirm children's wishes on switching gender, no matter the age or psychiatric history. The far left, which always like to use, well, Europe does it. Yeah, no, that doesn't work on this one anymore. Or on immigration. Sweden opened its borders to over 1.5 million immigrants since 2010, and now 20% of its citizens are foreign-born, and its education system is tanking, and it has Europe's highest rate of gangland killing.
Maher then widens the lens by bringing Sweden into the conversation, and the comparison is hard to miss. Sweden, once seen as one of the most peaceful and stable societies in Europe, opened its doors to large-scale immigration over the course of a decade, all wrapped in the same humanitarian language that the American left loves to celebrate. Maher describes the results as deeply troubling. He points to concerns about crime, integration, and social unity in a country that was once held up as a model for the rest of the world. And then he swings the spotlight back to the United States, this time focusing on education. For years, progressive ideology has been tightening its grip on American classrooms. But critics argue the Biden era poured fuel on that trend by pulling back from accountability, including moving away from standardized testing and other basic benchmarks. Maher's logic is brutally simple. No standards means less accountability. Less accountability means lower expectations. And lower expectations are exactly how a country ends up raising students who feel good about themselves but aren't actually prepared for the real world.
One result is that the far-right parties are in the government now there for the first time, to which liberals say blaming immigrants for the rising crime rate is racist. Yeah, but is it true?
The romantic idea that people are somehow completely changed the moment they step onto American or Canadian soil is not compassion. It is fantasy. Culture, values, habits, and behavior are shaped over years, often decades, sometimes entire generations. They do not simply disappear at a border crossing just because a politician wants to sound morally superior. Maher presents that as common sense, not extremism. His point is not that immigration is bad. It is that immigration without proper screening, without limits, and without seriousness creates real pressure on real communities. And pretending otherwise does not make those pressures go away. It just pushes the problem down the road. And from there, Maher turns cultural criticism into a political warning aimed directly at Democrats. Keep dismissing real public concerns as ignorance or prejudice. Keep pretending that voters are too simple to notice what is happening around them, and you will keep losing elections. The voters have already started sending that message loud and clear.
We've run this experiment many times, and the results are always obvious. Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century, or any century.
Then Maher takes on yet another ideological obsession growing inside the Democratic Party: socialism. A growing and increasingly loud segment of the left has become openly in love with the idea that capitalism is the root of all injustice, and socialism is the moral upgrade America supposedly needs. They talk as if tearing down the market and replacing it with a socialist system would bring fairness, dignity, and prosperity for everyone, all while erasing history from the conversation. Venezuela, Cuba, the Soviet Union. Time after time, socialist experiments have collapsed into repression, shortage, economic failure, and massive human suffering. Yet the true believers always reach for the same excuse. That wasn't real socialism. The wrong people were in charge. The next version will finally get it right. Maher cuts through that academic daydreaming with the verdict history has already delivered over and over again. Socialism doesn't keep failing because nobody has explained it well enough. It keeps failing because in practice, it simply fails.
It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening.
Bill Maher, a man the left has long treated as one of their own, just did what many Democratic politicians are too afraid to do. He said the quiet part out loud. The bigger case he makes is that Canada is not the progressive paradise it has been sold as for years. In several major areas, it looks less like a model to follow and more like a warning sign. A housing crisis made worse by reckless immigration levels. A healthcare system endlessly praised despite poor results and enormous costs. An education culture twisted by ideology and weakened standards. A brand of institutional wokeness that in Maher's view makes honest conversation harder and harder every single day. And if Democrats keep refusing to learn those lessons, if they keep holding on to socialist fantasies and border politics that voters no longer trust, then the ballot box will keep delivering the same painful answer. Reality does not bend to ideology. It does not negotiate with wishful thinking. And as Maher had just showed, sometimes the most powerful criticism comes from inside the house. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.